Resolve is a game concept that aims to address the topic of mental health. The goal of this experience is to not replace traditional treatments, but rather to add to them and give individuals another way of exploring this topic and gaining a better understanding of it. Upon entering the experience, you are greeted with a screen from which you can log in or sign up. After setting your account details, you are then brought to a screen where you can customize your character. Any choices made here on this screen will not impact your player's in-game stats in any way. Once your character has been customized, you'll then be introduced to the first element of this experience that tries to make a connection between the player and the topic of mental health. When it comes to mental health, trying to find the right words to describe what you feel can be hard, which makes the process of seeking and asking for help even harder. On the other hand, the ones that do know these words are still quite hesitant to share how they feel due to the stigma surrounding mental health and mental disorders. With this in mind, the last step of the setup process is a player's stats test. This is essentially a test comprised of several questions, either multiple choice or on a Likert scale, with each question aiming to gain a better understanding of how you, the player, respond and or feel in different scenarios in regards to mental health. This is made in collaboration with professionals in the mental health field and is in no way any form of diagnosis. In fact, at the end of the test, instead of being greeted with a message saying, based on your answers, you are X, the results are instead displayed as points allocated amongst 5 player statistics: health, constitution, willpower, dexterity, and perception. These stats are selected by analyzing player statistics used in well-published video games and linking them to feelings and actions portrayed when dealing with mental health issues. Number 1. Constitution. Constitution is a representation of a player's stamina or endurance. Low levels in this stat result in the player temporarily losing the ability to dash or sprint until it is replenished. Willpower. Willpower pertains to an individual's ability to focus and persevere. When low, the player character experiences high amounts of stress, which is portrayed through heavy breathing, a racing heart, and a slightly blurred vision. Dexterity. Dexterity relates to a player's overall speed and chances of performing a critical strike. The lower your dexterity, the slower your character, and the lesser your chances are of dealing extra damage. Perception. Perception represents the player's awareness of their immediate environment. Low levels in the stat leaves the player susceptible to creatures that possess the power of invisibility and creating illusions. Low perception is visualized with darkened border around the player's view, similar to tunnel vision. And lastly, health. Health is a representation of a player's physical endurance. Most abilities automatically do damage to the stat unless specified otherwise. By basing a player's in-game stats on a test to see how they would respond and view different scenarios before even stepping into the game, a somewhat accurate assumption could already be made on what areas a player might be struggling in. With this information, and with varying points allocated to different aspects of your character, the way you engage with the game world through quests, battles, consumables, equipments, etc. will differ from player to player, in essence, creating a personalized experience for each individual to explore and develop strategies to work on the stats that may be lacking and further strengthen the ones that don't. And now, the first step of the journey begins. The backstory of this experience is immediately given to the players upon arrival. The context of this game regards a planet that has been overruled by evil power-hungry creatures wreaking havoc on a once prosperous planet. With the impact surpassing its border, species of all walks of life gather together to rid these evil creatures before it is too late. The glowing orb seen here is the first character the players encounter in the game and will be the one to teach the players the starting mechanics they'll need to know in a safe and isolated environment. Finally, you've made it to the planet. As Orb brings you to the communal grounds where the protector of the planet, the Warden, is waiting for you, an evil creature appears and stops you in your tracks. Within minutes of the experience, you, the player, are already tasked to face an enemy in battle. With no other choice, you follow Or as they bring you to your first weapon, the Sword of Ordnance. The weapons in game come in many shapes and sizes, from long-range weapons to close range, all in a variety to suit your preferred fighting style. Additionally, weapons can be made more powerful with the use of enchantments. These are essentially upgrades or buffs that can be applied to weapons to improve player stats and/or deal more damage to enemy stats. It is important to note that enemies also share the same 5 stats that players possess. Knowing which stat an enemy ranks high or low in could help players in choosing the right enchantment to equip for a greater advantage or lesser disadvantage before heading into battle. After defeating the enemy, you and Or retrace your steps and head to the communal grounds to meet the Warden. The communal grounds is an area in the game where players can relax easily, as it is the only enemy-free zone on the planet. After drifting on the calm waters of the river that carries you into the grounds, a brief introduction is given by the Warden, and you are assigned to your very first quest. Within the experience, there are primary and secondary, or in other words, side quests that players can follow. Each quest has its own mission objective that dictates the goal, whether it be exploring, capturing, escaping, or hunting. With that being said, for this game concept, a total of 6 potential enemy bosses were created, which players get to interact with by completing various missions. More importantly, these bosses not only scale or differ in difficulty, but also in the mental disorders they represent. Sound. The element of sound finds itself nestled in a mountain cave far from all else. This creature has the ability to cast sound waves with the use of its instrument that targets players by decreasing your willpower and dexterity. It can be quite aggressive at first glance, but may even turn out to be friendly if engaged with mindfully. Balance. The element of balance is a two-spirited creature within one body. Each spirit alternates at random times from a fit of rage to complete calmness. Both sides possess the ability to control the element of earth. Due to its swiftness in attack, it causes the player a significant decrease in constitution. Ice. Unlike the previously mentioned creatures, the element of ice resides in an environment that lowers the player's willpower and health over time. This enemy is able to hide by mirroring itself on the ice walls of the maze. If the player attacks the wrong copy of the enemy, the attacks are then reversed onto the player themselves. Mind hypnosis. The element of hypnosis, also known as a puppeteer, has the ability to create illusions of evil creatures that can attack the player and use invisibility. When fighting this boss, the player's perception is decreased over time. Venom. Upon entering the poisonous forest, the player's constitution and willpower will slowly be depleted. Together with its venomous traps scattered all across the forest and the poisonous bombs it can throw, this element truly is a formidable opponent. Additionally, the thick fog in this area does not do well to help players, as this enemy can more easily camouflage in this environment. Last but not least, the element of shadow and void. The most formidable amongst them all, this creature is able to create a dome which, when entered, lowers the player's perception, willpower, and dexterity over time. It not only has the ability to summon puppets and draw life from them, but also teleport anywhere within the dome. Unlike the previous creatures, players can only travel to the location of this one after obtaining a particular item. So the journey of completing quests and fighting against enemies, the player's character must continue to grow stronger, not through the process of leveling up, but with the use of equipment. In video games, the concept of leveling up often carries this idea of receiving additional permanent stats to illustrate the player advancing and becoming stronger. However, when it comes to mental health, that's not always the case. Whilst individuals may gather tools to better deal with their issues, they themselves do not alter in form. The progress gained in mental health would not always be a constant or upward trajectory. There will be days of incredible highs and deep lows, and the player must be aware of both. In addition to using equipment, consumables are also another tool that players can use in their journey. As real-life treatments and medication for mental disorders have both positive and negative aspects to them, so do the consumables in-game. A potion can, for example, significantly increase your constitution, but at a slight cost of your willpower and dexterity. Some potions may only have positive benefits, but on the contrary, may only increase your stat by a small amount. In combination, all these tools, weapons, enchantments, equipments, and consumables instill into the player a new way of approaching issues. Number 1. Consider where you stand and how you feel. Number 2. Consider where the issue is and how it affects you. And number 3. Map out the steps that are needed to overcome these issues, whilst also taking into account the positive and the negative impacts. As you go through this process and approach the end, you will be given a gemstone called the lens. When in possession of this lens, it gives your player the ability to view the world through a different perspective, a different dimension. When traveling through the planet once more with this lens, you might come across items you've never seen before, secrets you've never heard before, and places you've never been before. Not only is this lens a representation of your in-game achievements, but it also accurately describes the journey you've gone through both in-game and in real life. By fighting against monsters that address different mental health issues, and by experimenting and using different tools to defeat them, you indirectly gain a better understanding of what it's like for the ones suffering from those disorders and the battles they have to fight. The experience explored above was mainly done through the perspective of a single player within a world going on their own journey. Whilst this may be beneficial when it comes to the subject of mental health, a common feeling amongst individuals that deal with mental health issues is a lack of community, support, and interactions with those that share their experiences. In this section, the existing experience is expanded to an open-world multiplayer game, and the features that could potentially be added are laid out. Introduction of global quests. Besides existing primary and secondary quests, players now have the ability to work together on global quests. Not only are these quests scalable based on the amount of players taking part, but the results of these quests are also persistent, meaning that they have long-lasting consequential effects for everyone in the game world. Resource sharing. While sharing equipment and weapons might not be possible as they directly represent the journey you've been through and what you've learned, items such as enchantments and consumables can still be exchanged and given. Special tags. Special tags can be created for experts and professionals within the mental health field, as well as for individuals that are actively taking part in the building up of the in-game community. Mentor spaces. Located near or on the communal grounds, mentor spaces is a place where experts and professionals can gather together. Essentially, it is a meeting point where players can find and interact with these individuals. Educational events. With these special tags and mentor spaces, giving professionals and experts the opportunity to create events within their own mentor spaces further expands what this experience is able to accomplish and the ways it is able to educate and help players. And lastly, help mechanic and rest points. During this demo, a single map was shown of a few areas a player could travel to. However, if this experience were turned into an open-world multiplayer game, having this world extend beyond the map would be necessary. With such a vast land, implementing a call for help mechanic, or several save points located throughout the planet where players can replenish their stats may be beneficial for their journey ahead.